Okay, off it goes.
Okay. Okay.
All right, everyone's
recording.
Oh, that's what it is. Because people were popping in, and that's what it was doing that. So, welcome everybody to the Hollywood Connection. And there's quite a few people that are going to be speaking this evening. So we're going to keep everybody who's not speaking on mute. And the best way to view this panel will be to set it to speaker view. That way you'll get the big picture of everybody who's speaking when they're speaking. And I was going to say, I don't know who wants to go first. Do we want to let Richard go first or Vera?
Let's let Vera go first.
Okay.
Well, I was going to say Richard, but I had no problem. Hi, everyone. My name is Vera Nazarian, and many of you here know I'm the author of the Atlantis Grail series, and I'm so honored to have everyone here to support this series and just talk about the Hollywood and the process and the, everything that goes with it. So I'm so ready to listen. This is so exciting.
I'll go next. I'm Richard Joel. I'm a writer, creator, producer in Los Angeles, and I actually optioned the rights from Vera to turn this into a TV series. And I create game shows, I create scripted content and produce scripted content, and I'll pass it on to the next person. How about Richard Leacock? How about you, buddy?
Hey, I'm Richard Leacock, and I'm an actor. I'm out here in Los Angeles as well, but I was born in London, raised in Canada, and came to the US. I've been acting for about 33 years. How's that?
Sure. Starling, you want to go next?
Yes, I'm calling in from London, England, and I'm a pop singer who also has a podcast on creativity. I also like to mentor creatives as well.
Alfred?
Hi, I'm Alfred Montejano. I'm calling in from San Diego, California. I'm the composer on for Mike's 99 Problems, sorry. And yeah, and it's great to meet you all.
And Mike?
I'm Michael Kehoe. I am a writer-director, and I have a number of projects that we have made already. And as Alfred has said, he's been my composer, both on the feature that we did a few years ago and on this new one. I'm actually calling in from Ohio, driving across country. So if I go in and out, it's because there's no signals in Ohio. So I'm here.
And who's
coming in loud and clear.
Right. So let's get on with the show.
Yes. Who's moderating?
I think it's Teri, and who else we have here? Oh, she's muted.
Yeah, sorry. I was like trying to get to the button and it was being very
Me too.
cooperative.
There we go.
Over here trying to, juggle things. So I know that we have a lot of questions. So the first thing we wanted to start out with was to ask what have been the major or minor effects of the pandemic on TV and movie productions, and how are they being dealt with overall, and how are people overcoming them and still being able to film things, etc.
Mike, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there's a major change in how we make films and what we do with the process. And one of the things that we have to do now is everyone has to be tested. So this last film that I did, we had a crew of about 40 people. We had everybody tested prior to shooting when coming on the set. We had to make sure that we sprayed down the set itself. We shot in a diner. It wasn't an operating diner, it was an actual set. The gentleman that owns it was a production designer, and it was out in the desert. So the heat was about 107 degrees, and we got through it with no cases of COVID whatsoever. And what happens is you have to be tested beforehand, and then everyone gets a color-coded wristband. And those wristbands dictate what part of the set you're allowed to go to. There are people that are allowed outside, there are people allowed inside, and there are people allowed on the actual working set. And you can't, we had to limit the amount of people that went in there. And also the only people that didn't have a mask on were the actors themselves. But during rehearsal, they would put it on. If they walked to and from the, their trailer or from outside, they would have to put it on. And then we would limit what was going on inside. So that has changed a great deal. I actually met with people from Universal, Warner Brothers, Sony, and Disney regarding the changes now. And, I don't know what people thought when you visit the set. There's usually you have breakfast in the morning, you go to work, 6 hours later, you have lunch. And then after that, you'll have snacks. Well, what they're trying to do to avoid the break for anyone to go anywhere is that they would have what they call French hours. So if you come in at 7 a.m., you would not break for lunch at all, but there would be food around the set for the entire day. However, instead of working 12 hours, they're scheduled for 10 hours. And to me, that's a better way of getting the work done, because if you start at 7 o'clock and you break at 1, most times you lose an hour and a half to 2 hours because everybody's taking off. And then by the time they call lunch, the end of lunch is the last person that goes in to eat. So if they call lunch at 1 o'clock and the last person goes in at 1:30, now you've got an hour. And by the time they get back, it's another hour and a half. So this, I think, is going to make the work efficient, but they always have to be cautious in doing the things that they do normally. You can't remove your mask. You remove your mask, they shut down the show for a half hour to make sure that no one was doing it. Even though people were tested, it's just a precaution that they take, and they want to be sure that no one is going to infect anyone or anything happens. So it does change a great deal of things. And insurance, it's difficult with insurance because you don't want your actor to get it, and you're in the middle of shooting and you lose your actor now for however long because of this. And if you do get COVID, it could last a month or more. So they're extremely cautious right now as far as the studios go.
And I think on the creative side, it's interesting because all of us, whether it be actors or writers or musicians, we're used to meeting with people in person in a room and finding that energy and that connection of creating and writing. And since COVID, a lot of us had to do this via Zoom or virtual meetings. So the energy is not quite the same, but I think now we're getting back to the point where we're wearing a mask and sitting 6 feet apart from our partners and trying to create and write the content. But it also comes from being able to pitch executives in a room. We no longer go in the room to pitch. So it's all done virtual. So, if you have a 5-minute pitch, it's really easy to keep an executive's attention. If you have a 25 or 30-minute pitch, they're looking at their screen, they're getting text messages, they're getting phone calls and emails. So it's not the same connection, I think, in trying to sell a show or pitch a project, but we're all having to adapt and make the best of it. And I think it's going to be like this probably for the next 6 or 9 months, where we're going to be doing our pitches and our meetings via Zoom and not actually in the room.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me just add to that. One of the things I think that's important now is the studios are concerned about the amount of crew members that are on the set and the amount of actors that are on the set. So, I myself took advantage of that by saying, I'm going to write something with a limited amount of cast members and a limited amount of crew members. So I came up with a story that takes place in literally one location and maybe outside with 6 actors, and 2 of them work 90% of the time. So I think this, people like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon, they're looking for content with a limited amount, because you're not going to get those shows that have 2,000 extras.
Yeah.
So,
Starling?
could we follow up with, it seems like we've gotten into how you're going to do the production part. So Richard, could you walk us through a little bit in general, how you take an optioned work and turn it into a finished movie
first of
or
all,
TV series?
Yes, first of all, we're talking about Vera's, the Atlantis Grail, which I optioned. And first of all, thank you, Vera, for working with me and allowing me to do this. Your
Thank you,
writing, your descriptions, how you brought the world of Gwen Lark, the Grail Games, the Atlantean world to life, and the visual you painted for me is overwhelming. There's a lot of content in 4 books. I've reread the first 3 several times. I keep finding new material and new things I want to dive into. But the process is taking something like this and figuring out, first of all, whether it be best as a film or a TV series. In this case, running it by my agents and a few execs at the studios, we determined this to be best fit for a TV series. Gives it a longer life, more chance for it to grow and have an audience. But from that, I would then take, or I'm taking, or have taken in all of these cases, what's that pilot episode look like? What does an actual episode involve from the cold open to the last act? And in doing so, it's like, okay, who are the characters? We create what's called a Bible, and that will include the characters, the story arcs for 3 to 5 years for each character. Who do those characters interact with within the show? What does the show look like in 3 to 5 years? What are the big tentpole events that happen in every season, in each episode? What drives it? Then also, how to stay true to Vera's vision, how to bring it all to life visually, because with the stage of CGI and all this animation, knowing that this takes place in so many different worlds, it's bringing all that under one sort of Bible, one sort of production lookbook, which has images. Then I got to create the pitch materials, which can be posters, can be photos, can be what's our dream actor list. So there's lots of components that will go into presentation materials. And then it's honing a 25 to 30 minute pitch, at which point I would then try and attach a showrunner that's involved in sci-fi world, or a celebrity that's known for sci-fi, maybe like a Will Smith, his production company, and then go out and try and pitch the network studios and execs, streamers to buy the show. So it's a very arduous process. There's a lot of content to digest in Vera's books. Recently I had a concussion last year and came out of it thinking a completely different route. Ran it by Vera, she loved it, and so that's the angle we're going with. Yeah. But I'm very excited, but it is a lot to digest and put together to actually bring this to life. That's kind of the process.
And it's stunningly amazing to me. It's so much work. Oh.
It is, but it's worth it. So worth it. It's going to be amazing.
Yeah, so there was a question from somebody that kind of fits into what you were talking about, Richard, which is how much of a say does Vera get in who gets cast when you get around to doing the casting?
Truthfully, it lies with the network or studio that buys the show. They will have final say-so on everybody that's cast. I can have my say-so. Vera can have her say-so. The production entity we work with will have their say-so, but it really comes down to the studio or network or streamer that buys the show. They have the final say. Oftentimes, they have deals with certain actors they want to put to work. Sometimes they have somebody that they know they want to use. And a lot of times it's just a casting process, finding somebody that's new and amazing, like they did with the Harry Potter series. Those were all unknown actors that are now all stars, but they did a casting process. So it would be with this, because there's so many young adults in this, 18 to 20. I'm sure a lot of it would be an open casting or a certain casting call to find the right actors that fit these roles. Maybe there's some that are well-known and maybe some that are unknown, but it really lies the final decision with the studio or network.
Makes good sense to me.
Yeah. So our next question was actually, what would you like to see in terms of happening with TAG? Do you want a TV show or do you want a movie? And what are the pros and cons of having it as a TV show versus a movie?
It's really simple. We're aiming it for a TV series. The idea is that a streamer or network can give a show like this 2 or 3 or 4 seasons to build an audience. If you go out with just a film, if you don't hit it out of the park on the first film, you don't get a second or third film, and it's kind of a waste. And a budget like this for a film is going to be $100 million, so you got to hit big, otherwise there's no second chances. Whereas with a series, they can monetize the price over 10, 12, 15, 20 episodes, depending on who buys it. It can also be sold internationally as well as domestically. So there's more ways to bring the money back in and build an audience long term. And there's enough content here for 20 seasons between the 4 books and the prequels that she's writing. This could go on for many, many years to come, and then telenovelas off of that. So the idea of a film doesn't add up financially and make sense for the longevity of this project.
That makes great sense to me. I agree. I'm loving the idea of a series. So this is great.
I was going to say, you could be the Simpsons of science fiction and go on for seasons and seasons and seasons, right?
Can I ask a question of the group?
Absolutely, go for it.
Guys, I want to know, what is your creative process that each of you go through, whether it's creating and writing a script, a song, composing music, or prepping for an acting role? What's your creative process?
Who's going first? I guess I'll go first.
Go for
Go
it.
for it.
All right.
Go for it.
You know, of course, it depends on what kind of role we're talking about. You know, if I'm preparing to play a police officer in the past, I'd actually gone on a ride along just to see what a day in the life is like for them. You know, that's not something I'll always do or always did, but I definitely have done that. And, you know, you just want to get into the psyche of who this person is. You want to create maybe a backstory for that person to kind of inform, you know, where this person is going. And you really just pay attention, you know, as long as the words are there on the page, you can really find who you're trying to play. That's my process. And, you know, maybe I'll shave my mustache a little different. I don't know.
Shall I share my musical process?
Sure.
Yes,
Please.
yes, please.
So, though I'm a pop singer and some people sort of buy songs or, you know, don't necessarily write them, I write all my own work. And it's all autobiographical. And when I started just about 3-4 years ago, it often came from my dreams. So I keep a dream diary, as in literally every morning write down my dreams. And the songs would come from that. So most of the work you have heard or hear is from that. The debut album, which is this year, has come more from my like personal diary, and I bring that into the studio. And the boys that I work with, the people that create the chords, I then sort of sing a melody, sing a kind of theme over, and then shape the kind of ums and ahs onto the music. And with their help, with the chords I don't really deal with, but the lyrics, the melody I do. We then find a place for the story, but it has to be, I'm always trying to tell my truth. So it always has to come from me. I always write my own work, and it has to feel like it's the truth. It's the truth of the moment. And so yeah, the work is awfully telling of where I'm at that particular year, and this year has been like no other year. And talking about COVID, bizarrely, I mean, I'm not the only musician saying this, but you know, the recording studio closed down as I was finishing the album, and we found this bizarre but incredible software, I forget what it's called, where we could remotely mix the album. So although I couldn't get to the studio, this album that you'll hear, it's coming out October the 9th, first single, but it will be coming out throughout the winter, has actually been finished remotely. So I wouldn't recommend that. Obviously at the beginning when you're writing a song, you do need to be in the room, you do need to create, you need to record a bunch of musicians, you need to get all that in. But actually once you've got the moving parts, you just need to put them in place. We found a software, I was physically in his, well not physically, but in his computer as it were, and being able to direct the mixing as if I was in the studio. So it was pretty remarkable technology.
Thank goodness for that.
Actually, I just want to
Especially now.
piggyback off something you just said, is, you know, in being in your truth, that is something that as an actor, we also have to do. We have to bring ourselves to the role. I try not to change too much about myself for the character. I bring myself to that character.
Wow.
Basically, just to piggyback what you were saying.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about that in drama training, and it's so funny because I think people presume that actors actually, you know, have to leave themselves to become another. But when you bring yourself, and I feel like this with music, when I speak about the individual issues I have, the paradox is they're universal. Whenever I try to write for the masses about heartbreak or whatever, you know, they always flop. Those songs always feel soulless because I'm trying to communicate a big message to lots of people, rather than my individual story somehow, with the detail of that, actually resonates with the greater, with people's issues on a greater level. And I feel like that with acting, from what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alfred, what's your creative process?
Oh, well, my process usually involves having a discussion when we're talking about scoring a film. It's obviously reading the script first and foremost, you know, and there are conversations about, you know, what kind of story we're telling, sharing of ideas, equipment back and forth. Obviously, right now we can't do a lot of hiring of musicians, which is a kind of a bummer, but you know, that's kind of forced me to, you know, take on the task of like recording every instrument myself, and you know, playing guitars or whatever, you know, whatever the thing calls for. So you know, but yeah, taking that and spotting the film. We just did that with Mike not too long ago. It was a kind of a quicker session than I'm used to, but you know, with COVID and everything, we're, you know, having to take advantage of every meeting. You know, when we're there, we gotta like do several things at once. We don't have the luxury of like meeting over and over again, you know, just, you know, but it's, you know, that's kind of it. And once we have a pretty clear direction of where we're going with the story, then I just kind of get in the trenches and start recording tones, beats, textures, whatever. And it goes from there. It's kind of,
That sounds great.
it's kind of the process. Yeah.
Mike, what's your creative process?
Well, work from the very beginning. You know, I'm always inspired by something, whether it's a book or an event that's happened. And when I get that idea, I have that start to plant that seed in my head, and then I'll listen to music, and that music will inspire certain scenes. And so I'll, while I'm go on to my playlist of music, I'll download all these different songs that would pertain to that particular story. For an example, for this picture, this particular picture, and I've done it on everything that I've directed, but for this particular one, I discussed the music with Alfred, and I said, you know, we want sort of a dirty Southern sound, you know, something that was like an old Walter Hill movie where you get that rye cruder sound. And so I would listen to that, and then while I'm writing this, the images are going through my head, and they just start to appear to me, and then I start writing. Now, I did the same thing. I read a book called Necroscope that a friend of mine got the rights to and wanted me to write. And I was in Budapest, and I was writing the episodes for that, which reminded me about what you're talking about, this series here. You know, there's 18 books, and you can't put, you know, 10 pounds of story in a 2-pound bag by doing it as a feature. You really have to write as a series. So the process is different, where you take it from the book, you listen to the music, at least for me, and then I start developing everything. Then once the script is done and we start shooting, I'll do a background for this. This is basically for the actors. I will write a background for the actors that you'll never see on screen. You'll never, you know, it'll never be part of the story. However, it gives something for the actors to grasp onto when they're on set, and it works for their character. Then once we finish that and we cut the picture, we get a rough cut, then I will call Alfred. We'll come in to do a spotting session. And normally we have a longer spotting session than that, than we did. But what I will say is I need a tone here to accentuate this moment and elevate this or that for us to get a point across. And then I'll get my sound person who's mixing to add in little pieces and little moments there. And then you want to make sure that the color, because we have to do color correction, you know, people don't realize that sometimes when you accentuate a color, like we are accentuating the color red in our picture, it just brings out this film noir type of feel. And so, you know, it's a collaboration with all these talented people. And, you know, I always say you got to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you in order to make your picture. And I've been blessed so far with the pictures that I've
We may have lost Michael there for a
done,
second.
having people like Alfred.
He's back. Michael, are you
people
there?
around me. So, can you hear me?
Yep.
There you are.
There, you're back.
Sorry, I'm in Ohio, so it's a little bit of a. It's beautiful here, but it's just it's a signal. But anyway, you know, it's a combination of things, you know, that you put together for that. Someone's asking who Alfred is. Alfred is my composer who was just there on screen. So, you know, it's a discussion. It is a team effort to make this work. And the development of this took some time, but then once that's finished and you do a proof of concept, you've got to write a Bible for how the story goes. And I'm not quite sure. I'm not really wasn't informed about your book or what is going on with that. But is it a series of books?
It's a series. Think of the series Ancient Aliens joined with Star Wars, and you get an idea. So it's a really big scope science fiction thing.
And how many books are there?
4 right now, with about 6 more scheduled to go. Prequel series and.
Yeah, I think you really have to take the time to make this series. You know, you don't want to rush through it. It's kind of like, you know, if you don't chew your food, you're going to choke. And what you want to do is you want to make this series as rich as possible by taking the time to create all of the episodes. And as I said before, if you've got 10 pounds of content, you want a 10 or 11 pound bag to put it in, because you don't want to cheat yourself. And people say, well, that, you know, it's nothing like what the series was like or what the books of what I read. So you have an opportunity now because of the platforms like Amazon and Hulu and Netflix to give more, you know, than you would if you had to do 3 episodes for ABC or NBC.
Well, and that's, I think, the great thing, as you're touching on, Mike, is there is a lot of content in these books, and I'm taking my time and diving in to every little aspect of it to really make sure it hits the points and it gets the right story and it has the right characters. And I read the books the first time, and then the second time in my creative process for this is actually visualizing as I read, what is this going to look like on screen? How are these characters going to play out? Yes, it's Glenn Lark's story, but there has to be other characters having their story as well, because you can't just have one story throughout a series. Right. So it's like, what characters are important? Who's going to be brought in? And in some cases, jumping between books in the future and books in the past to bring pieces into each episode to tell the story. Right. So there's a lot to digest, and every time I go back and reread these books, I see more and visualize more, and it just makes it a richer story that I want to tell. So it is, as you said, you have to take your time to find all the little nuances, all the little angles, the right characters, the right energy to deliver this with, so people get excited by it and not lost on how much content's actually there.
Right, and a lot of times within a book, you'd get 3 pages of description of what's going on, which is great for the production designer and to give that, but you want to be able to narrow yourself into the character itself and the story and what motivates that. And you can still cut back and forth to other characters, anything that's driving the story ahead. And, you know, you said there's 4 books, correct? Is that what you're saying?
It's a 4 books. It's completed, and there's going to be one kind of a sequel, and then another prequel series, sort of like the origin story. So right, yeah, it's a lot.
I think whoever does this, you know, you've got to remain true to the books and true to the story, and you don't want someone to write it that's going to go off the beaten path, because then you disappoint, you know, your fan base, and your fan base is the strongest part of what you are for the story, and sometimes they can dictate, you know, what the journey is going to be. And I would just, you know, I would stick, if the fans love the book, then why not stick to exactly what's in there, you know?
And 100%. We can attest that the fans love the books.
Yeah.
Yes. And as far as, you know, my creative process, because I create unscripted kind of game and competition shows as well as scripted content, my creative process on the unscripted side is not, I don't ever sit around and think of ideas. I hear a word, I read a sentence, I see an image, and in my head, I instantly get an idea of what that game could be or what a competition could be around something. Mm-hmm. And so it has nothing, I mean, a lot of people sit around and brainstorm. For the unscripted side, it's just visions come to me based on an image or a saying, or I hear somebody say something in a bar and I write it down and I figure out what's the game or what's the show around that word or sentence. So that's my creative process on the unscripted. On the scripted side, my creative process is to submerge myself in the world of what it would be like to be on that set or in that show or in that film, or in this case, as I read the books, I sit and say, what would it be like to be in this world and how can we bring it to life? And that's how I sort of visualize bringing this, you know, my stuff to life.
And there's a lot of game material in this book. It's I forgot to mention that it's like the Hunger Games meets Star Wars meets Ancient Aliens. So there's a big monumental Olympics type thing with aliens and crazy things. And so
you left out the visual of Avatar. It's got the visual of Avatar.
Oh, that's right.
Hanging Gardens of Babylon, and it's such a visual.
And the spinning pyramid, the pyramid that comes apart, and
it's the great thing about this series is for an audience is it goes from planet Earth into outer space onto the planet of Atlantia, then back into outer space, back to Earth. So there's so many different sort of sets and designs and stages and characters, from action and battle and games to the death, to a beautiful marriage, to Star Wars type battles out in space. So it's the visual and the set design on this is going to be amazing.
Yeah, I cannot wait. And I was talking to somebody recently, and just to list the kind of scenarios that we have things like Lost in Space, a SEAL team mission. We have like a fancy court weddings. We have races through underground caverns. We have space battles. We have, I mean, seriously, there's just, you cannot imagine the number of different little, set pieces, as you will, to put.
Yeah.
It's all in.
I think it'll keep the audience, obviously the fans of the book, but a new audience, but also the actors engaged, the set designers, the creators, writers, because there's so much material that you can play with for years. And it's super exciting and sexy. And, the Grail Games battles to me are amazing. And so are the qualifying stages in the early book,
Right.
I want to see it now.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I would love for you to see it.
We do too.
It's exciting.
Exactly.
There's one thing that I wanted to add to that. When you're saying, since there's such love for this book and these books and the story, I think that you really have to have a guiding shepherd for this. And I'll give you, for instance, I operated motion capture camera on Avatar 2 that I was fortunate to have worked on for a few weeks. And James Cameron is a genius. And one of the things that I did was, I was on the set and there was literally nothing there. Everything was motion capture. And then everything was added in later on. It was magnificent, the world that he created. And so having that with that eye, that's what you need for a story like this. You can't just hire somebody because they're a director, because it's not going to work. And the first people that are going to be disappointed are the fans, because they're going to expect so much more from the director as well, that person really needs to get into the heart of the story and see where it's headed and where it could be.
Yes, agreed.
And somebody mentioned that I should read the book. I definitely will be reading the books.
And the book actually, you can get it for free on Amazon or anywhere else. I made the ebook free, so anybody can grab. It's called Qualify, and it's
guess what I'll be doing today?
Available everywhere.
You won't be able to put it down, Richard. I guarantee.
Okay. It's like that story you hear as a kid. The first one's free, but the second one's going to cost you. Yeah.
There you go.
Remember, Richard,
it's a price.
It's told from a 16-year-old girl's point of view, so you'll have to get your head wrapped. But I'm sure as an actor, you can do that. You can find a 16-year-old girl in you.
There's probably one in there.
There's one in all of us.
I was going to ask a question as far as doing the TV show goes. So now we know you would rather do a TV show than a movie, and I think that's a good reason. But if you had to pick between doing, say, 20, 30-minute episodes versus 10 one-hour episodes, like the difference between being really on network TV versus getting to do it on Netflix or HBO or something like that, which format do you think would be better?
Well, the thing with Netflix, first of all, so yes, network TV follows a very stringent guideline. They have half-hour episodes, they have hour episodes, which are really 23 minutes and like 44 minutes.
Right.
I would much rather see this on a Netflix or an Amazon, of course, because you have the flexibility to do a 50-minute episode or an hour and 10-minute episode or a 47-minute episode. So Netflix and the streamers, they don't have a specific guideline to how many minutes a show has to be. This would never be a half-hour episode. There's too much content to do a drama in a half an hour. So if it was a network, it would be a 1 hour. It could be on an ABC or a CBS or a Fox or something like that. But on a streamer, that gives us that latitude to wrap that episode around how much time we actually need to write and produce it. And that's what I love about the streamers, is giving writers, directors, creators that longitude to make what they feel is necessary for that particular episode to tell that story of those characters and get out what they want. So to me, ideally, that would be a fantastic place for it, because we'd have that room and flexibility, really.
Please, I would love for that to happen.
And I know, you know, we just, Michael and Richard and Alfred and I just produced, Michael wrote and directed a project called 99 Problems, which we're hoping to take into the streamers. He's going into one of them soon. I can't necessarily say who, but the whole idea is that this show could be 25-minute episodes, 35, 45 minutes. It gives us that flexibility to do what we want in telling that particular story. And now, Michael, if we want to talk about that process of working during COVID on a project like that, it was great to be back on set. There was a lot of, Michael talked about the COVID training and everything we went through, which was amazing. But I think as a director, Michael, what was that like to direct during COVID?
Well, let me just touch back on what you were saying about the type of episodes or time-wise. Outlander has a great format for that. There are other episodes that are shorter. And when people want to binge watch, sometimes they're looking at their watch and say, oh, this one's an hour and a half. Or they'll say, this one's only 45 minutes. I'm going to sit and watch it. And they end up watching 5 episodes at 45 minutes. But when we're shooting it, we're not thinking about 45 minutes. We're thinking about, I'm going to tell this story. We're going to end it here by saying to be continued. So you could literally shoot, a 2-hour movie and break it up into 40-minute episodes. But whatever it is, you must tell the story, and it could last on, the seasons could go forever, but you must tell what's in the story. Jumping up to COVID, I was really nervous about doing this because I didn't want everybody that, it was on the set were friends of mine, and I did not want anyone to get sick. I don't want to lose anyone. So it was like a family, and we trust each other. We all got tested. Richard literally came in he's been a friend of mine for many years. He came in at the last second, but this had happened to me before. I did a short film that went to Sundance. It was about suicide, and it was kind of like a Twilight Zone. And at the last second, the lead fell out, and the night before, I got someone else. Well, the same thing happened on this, and I called Richard. I was a little nervous about, what would happen, and Richard just said to me, I'm there, don't worry about it. It's our friendship that is what, is what is working. So we got to the set. As I said, I was nervous, and so was everyone else. We were tested, and we had to take our time. We didn't have a lot of time to shoot, so we had to condense what we had on those pages. And sometimes that's a factor that you have to pay attention to, where other people who are watching the show don't realize that you're up against, you're up against the time that an actor can be available because they have to go on another movie. You're up against the time that we have this location for 3 days. You may need 5. There's so many factors that are against you. You're always fighting time and fighting money, and it's like a military operation. You've got to take that hill. You've got to get it. And you've got your team working with you to get there. COVID is a difficult thing that we had to deal with. And I think we've got the plan to attack it. It's just a matter of, staying true to people being honest about what they have and where they're going, and hopefully they'll be tested. You can get the results in 30 seconds rather than, what we're doing, what's available now. So do you have a question that I can answer specifics on?
Ladies, do you have any more, what questions do you have?
Richard?
Oh, me. I know. I would just say, what was it like? You know, obviously with the actors, everybody wearing masks, having the social distance, you're not able to collaborate as much necessarily with your DP and your first ADs and stuff. How was that process of working with like Richard, the actors, in a situation where everybody's got to keep their mask on? We can only take it off at the last minute to act. Was that process a lot harder because you're not allowed the freedom to get up close to the actors and get in their ear the way you would without a mask on?
Well, we had the time to prep where we talked to each other. You know, with Richard, since he knew exactly what I wanted, and I gave him a backstory, and I would tell him, you know, certain things prior to this, and then, you know, you have to put your trust in the actor and let the actor go. And I allowed him to run with the ball. As far as my DP, which is a director of photography, John Connor, who I've worked with on a number of pictures, John and I knew exactly what I wanted. We sat together and we talked about the look. We always look at other films and try to say, you know, we want to capture this feeling from this film and that feeling from that film. And we've already got it in our head. And then, you know, we talk about the equipment. On this particular project, we used a crane to do most of the moves instead of having to move a camera and do the coverage. So, you know, having that to save time was a major factor, that it was a gift that we needed, you know, because of COVID. You know, what I would love to do is answer a question from the ladies if they have something about the book series, about what they would want in their film, and maybe I can help, you know, in that process.
Or myself.
Yeah.
Ladies, what other questions do you have?
I think that there were a lot of questions from our fans about how the screenplay gets put together, and you know, who writes it, and how true to the book will it be, and how do the screenwriters pick and choose from the book and then embellish, or as you mentioned already, Richard, you may have to change some of the perspectives to other characters, since it probably wouldn't work too well to keep it entirely in Gwen's point of view.
Yeah, normally, you know, they were aiming this toward a TV series. Most of the time there's an A story, a B story, and sometimes even a C story in every episode. And so as much as it is Gwen's story throughout, there would have to be alternate characters, whether it be Gracie or George or the father or the mom, or Aeson's story.
Or 10 billion other people.
Or the Emperata. You know, you have to say, what is their story in this episode? How does it pertain to Gwen having to enter the Grail games? What was his decision to decide to give her access into the games right away? You know, jump through all of the hoops to put her right in the Grail games. So we have to know, how did that come to be, and why did it come to be? We can't just always, as Mike said earlier, the author can always spend 3, 4, 5 pages describing something. We've got to do it in, you know, whether it be 45 minutes or an hour and 15, to show that whole story and why it came to be. And so there will be additional characters in every episode that have their stories heard or described. And you want to see what happens to Gracie, and you want to see what happens to Aeson's sister, in so many other characters, all of her friends, LaRonda, you know, what happens to them when she, you know, when she's away doing combat training or technical training. You know, you have to see it all to get the whole picture. It can't just be Gwen's story the entire time. So it's going through the books and pulling out those characters, and then sometimes trying to stay true to Vera's, you know, vision and the character, but also times we have to write in that dialogue that's not there. Because although these books are 1,000 pages long, it's not all dialogue. It's a lot of it is description of what's taking place and what they're wearing. And she's fantastic describing the visuals of the set design, but we're going to build that out. You're going to see that. And so it's creating sometimes dialogue that wasn't there and stories that weren't there to stay true to what the story has to be around Gwen and what the story of the books actually go through and get us from book to book to book. As far as who writes it, I'm developing out the pilot and writing the pilot episode myself. And then I would then partner or look for somebody like a showrunner from a Star Trek or Star Wars or something that's in the sci-fi world and see if they want to partner, and then we'd either write a new version or rewrite the version I have, or maybe take it down another road. If a network buys it, they may want to bring in a writer that writes the best sci-fi, scripts in the world. It really, there's such a process, and there's not one specific answer of how this script is going to get made and sold. It could be a varying instances of people putting their 2 cents in, depending on where it goes and who comes on board as a partner and who buys it. And oftentimes, if you hire a writer, it can be, thousands, $50,000, $100,000 to find a writer that's going to write it basically on spec, because there's no guarantee it'll get sold or made or he'll be paid. And most writers don't want to work for free, except for Mike.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, let me just add. let me add to that, because I want to make this as clear to the fan base as well. The way that it works out most time, what happened with me, I was brought on to write episodes for a series of books. You have to talk to the writer of the book first, and you have to get into the writer's head. And then the writer is going to say, because this is before you hire the screenwriter, you're going to say, I don't think this person understands what I really want here. You don't want to hire a Quentin Tarantino version of this story, because you're not going to get what you want out of it, So if you're saying it's like Star Wars and Hunger Games, so you want somebody that understands that world. Now, once you get into that writer can get into the skin of the book writer, and they understand that, they are going to do some things when they go on their own, and they're going to be thinking, I want to make sure I stay true to the book and get this done. They would do the first few, maybe 30 pages, and then you could develop an understanding of saying, this is good, let's change this and go there or go here. And as that develops and you're able to go further into it, you also have to make sure that when you bring in an art director and a production designer, that they would be able to actually see this world that you explained in the book, and stay true to that. So there's all those elements. You can't rush through it, because if you rush through it, like I said before, it's like just putting food in your mouth and swallowing it. You're going to choke. And who do you disappoint? You disappoint yourself, you disappoint the fans, and the next thing you know, it goes nowhere. So I think staying true to that and finding the right writer, finding the right director, and all of the other elements that need to go along with it. The composer is going to be extremely important on this. You want to make sure that your art director, your composer, and your director are the ones that you bring on to discuss the process after it's been written by the screenwriter.
Well, I hate to disappoint everybody, but we are out of time. So I would like to thank everyone for coming. And yes. So I didn't know if anybody wants to hang around and chat with some of the fans in the Discord server and let them ask you questions. It's all by text. You're welcome to join people there, but and you're of course welcome to come to any of the other panels we have for the rest of the day. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Starling,
Thanks,
Michael,
guys.
Alfred, Richard, thank you very much for joining us. Vera, ladies, thank you very much for hosting us.
Starling, and I really appreciate.
This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me, you guys. I appreciate it, and it was nice to meet everybody.
And once you've read the book, Michael, you'll need to join our Facebook group.
Absolutely.
Now, Alfred's already asked to join our Facebook group.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yesterday.
Yes.
Good.
So you'll also need to read the book, so you'll get to know the characters.
I'm doing that tonight.
All right.
Thank you again, everyone. Thank you so much. This is lovely to meet you all. Okay.
Bye, guys.
So the next thing up on Zoom is the Tag Fandom Meet and Greet. So anybody who wants to see and talk with other fans, that's coming up next. And just go to Discord and click on the Meet and Greet.
Great.